Hi, I'm Carmen and this is Nutritional Biochemistry, and today we're going to make Mujaddarah. The most simple dish you can possibly make. It requires the fewest ingredients and surprisingly it has an exquisite taste, so I think you're going to love it. And we're also going to talk about folate metabolism today. Today I'm cooking for school lunches and I have large servings, so I need to feed 14 small mouths. Started out with a kilo or 2.2 pounds of lentils, and my single dish recipe of the Mujaddarah requires 1 cup soaked lentils. So we're going to measure that out, and I'm doing it 3 times today, so I'm making a triple recipe. And this would be a great recipe for a large family. If you have 4 to 6 children, especially in the teenage, the 10 to 18-year-old range, you want to serve a dish twice in a week. And you have a large family, I suggest this dish doubled or tripled the Mujaddarah recipe. Tripled, great. If you have extra, you can freeze some. It freezes easily, then you can defrost just a small amount. But it's also a dish that can be turned into other foods and other recipes as well. Mujaddarah is an easy recipe that you can turn into other recipes throughout the week. For example, one day you could serve it plain, another day you can top it with avocado, another day you can serve it with a side of bread, another day you can top it with artichokes and fresh tomatoes and cilantro and some crumbles of Roquefort cheese, and have a whole different dish. So it really depends on your toppings, how it comes across in the presentation. You can serve it as a side dish next to a grain pilaf or on its own in a large bowl. In addition to that, I'm doing a little kitchen hack, and I hope you can follow along, or you can choose to ignore when I talk about part of our hack. Today is making the lentils that we need here for another dish as well, which is our beet walnut lentil burgers that are very sweet. They have a very nice texture, very mild flavor, and they're loved by children as well. And that's another dish I'm going to be making this week. So right now I've soaked and I'm going to sprout the lentils for that dish later. I'm going to go ahead and get started measuring my lentils to see how many I have sprouted from the initial measurements, because that way I just cut out the 2 bowls and the extra washing and the extra rinsing in that process. 1, 2. You can learn how I hack things in the kitchen this way. It might seem complex to watch all these steps, but then you learn how to manage your kitchen, and so you have lentils for 3 other dishes. I'm going to have some sprouted lentils as well. I'm going to pull off maybe a cup, originating from 1/3 cup. Normally lentils double in size. 9, 10. Today we're going to discuss folate metabolism. 11. 12, 13.
That's a lot. Those are 1,000, I think.
So I want 2/3 of this recipe to go into my Mujaddarah, and 1/3 is going into my lentil burgers.
Those are, I think, 1,000.
Now that I have washed my lentils again, I'm going to measure out 5 cups of my 13 for my doubled beet veggie burger. 1, 3, and I like these to be sprouted more, so I'm going to continue sprouting them in this pot, and in warm weather rinse them more. In cool weather I don't need to rinse them as much. I can almost just put them at this point in this well insulated pot with a towel on top, and those are going to continue sprouting for my beet veggie burgers. I'll set that aside. To continue with our very simple Mujaddarah recipe, I'm doing it ×3. You of course can do it ×1. Both recipes versions will be available on my blog, so you don't have to multiply it out, and you can just follow the steps and see how I'm doing it for that. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to need 2 cups of rice for my 8 cups of soaked lentils that came from 5 1/3 cups. So I'm going to rinse this rice really well, and then after I rinse it, I'm going to soak it in other water and that water I'm going to keep soaking until my onions are done and until I'm ready to start cooking the lentils and the rice together. The rice, I'm going to give it one rinse to wash it, and then the next rinse is going to be a sitting of water, and it's going to soak in water and till I'm ready to make the rest of the recipe. The rice water actually is a key beauty secret, and you can save that rice water and put it on your skin, and I will tell you what, it wipes away the little imperfections. You rinse your skin with rice water every day for a year. It's fermented rice water, so I'll take the rice, the second rinsing of the rice from the soaked rice, maybe about 30 minutes of soaked rice, could be overnight if you like. That releases niacin into the water. That niacin is that nicotinamide you see in all the great beauty products. I'll leave that jar or that half jar of water out overnight on the counter, and then I'll just pop it in the fridge after that. And then just every night after washing my face with tap water, I go rinse my face with the rice water. Often I rinse my face as well with filtered water. Even if I don't have the rice water, I still do a filtered water. Tap water is so drying to the skin. It's got chlorine, all kinds of chemicals. We don't really drink tap water. It shouldn't be on your skin as well. And this, this is tinted sunblock face. And a little dusting of tapioca flour. Foundationless. Except, my concealer, my little imperfections, but foundationless. You can be in the sunshine without foundation and be like, wow, look at that skin. I should pull out another handful of my Mujaddarrah recipe because I forgot I had an extra third cup, and put that into my sprouting lentils, which I will then pull apart, double that amount for sprouts and salads or a stir fry or something like that. Olive oil, key ingredient, very high in vitamin E. You're going to have 1 cup for the triple recipe. A regular recipe, we use 1/3 cup. There's 2 onions per cup of lentils. Today we're going to discuss folate metabolism, why I chop these onions. And the way they are caramelized, you don't really want to do it in a food processor because it pulls out too much water. Folate is a very important molecule for your body's metabolism. It's important for making things, it's important for genetic expression. It's a central molecule in the entire body. And because of this, it is very important to consume. The RDA for pregnancy is 600 micrograms per day, and the RDA for lactation is 700 micrograms per day. And research suggests that a mid-range dose of folic acid supplementation of 400 micrograms per day is going to be the most effective, both in preventing neural tube defects, starting preconception, as well as preventing other issues that can arise that are metabolic issues, and we will discuss those as we go through the video, what those issues are and how they can be prevented. Folate from food forms is that it's folate. Folate from supplements usually tends to be folic acid. Ooh man, I did not think about this. My mother used to do this, hold a match inside your mouth. The sulfur in the match somehow prevents the onions from burning your eyes. We'll see how it works out. Folate in foods is that it's folate. It's in a form that is not used by the body, but it is the food form. It has to be converted into tetrahydrofolate or methyl tetrahydrofolate, 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, the L form, to be able to be activated and utilized in the body. Folic acid is easily absorbed. It's the form in supplements. Folic acid also has to be turned into the active form for the body to use it. Now, folic acid must also be converted into tetrahydrofolic acid, or 5-methyl tetrahydrofolic acid. The reason that folic acid is used in supplementation and added to the food supply is because of its stability. It is a stable form and it does not degrade over time when stored. And also because it's easily measured. Folate in foods is going to vary. You are not always going to have the same amount of folate in a food source, and it can vary for a variety of reasons. agricultural practices, soil conditions, pH, the growth matrix of the food. So all these things affect folate. So you might have a 20% difference in between 2 bunches of Swiss chard, which is a great source of folate. Today we're focused on lentils, and lentils are one of the highest folate foods that there are, with 1.5 cups containing 100% of your daily folate needs. Now, like I said, the bioavailability of folate varies as well. Folate bioavailability depends on your food matrix, which is the composition of the foods in your stomach that you're eating that day. It depends upon other factors that help with absorption or inhibit absorption. For example, folate is phytic acid or phytates are a big issue in the literature, and it is the biggest reason I see behind people that promote a primarily meat diet to get all your nutrients is the way of thinking that takes out legumes and grains and foods that are high in phytates is based on research that was mostly done theoretically in test tubes, not in the actual body, not measurements in population studies. And it didn't take into account that the majority of phytates are removed, up to 100%. We're talking 90 to 100% removed through soaking processes, and then additionally through sprouting. You soak and sprout your lentils for 2 days like I've done, you don't have phytates, relatively speaking. It's like saying I'm not wearing white. I'm wearing pink, it's got some white in it, but it's not white. Now, I always wonder if the way nature designed things is better for a reason, and the reason that folate has a lower bioavailability and lower absorption is maybe the body needs that. Why would I think that? Well, let's elaborate some more on the mechanics behind folate and folic acid. Folic acid, if you don't have enough of the factors that help activate folic acid into its biologically active folate form in the liver and in other compartments in the body, I'm just chopping like a maniac and not even thinking what I'm doing, then your body will not be able to activate that folic acid. Is that harmful or is that helpful? Does your body like to have folic acid floating around in high amounts? Apparently, no, it does not, because it turns out that high intake of folic acid can lead to difficulties in life, such as autism, increased incidence of autism, childhood allergies, and food allergies. That's strange. What do we have an increased incidence of recently and lately? It's not something I've really studied per se with a focus on, but when I've seen things in the literature, it either appears that we're just becoming more aware of these issues and cognizant in how to treat these issues, or that there's a greater incidence of them, necessitating the need for greater treatment, greater attention, greater awareness around these things. What are these things? Increased food allergies. Childhood food allergies. Did you know of children are allergic to food when you're a kid? Now it's just common in school for it to have. I have 3 different food allergies on my list, mostly dairy. I would suspect wheat would probably be another one. Often diagnosed, and not even so much wheat, but the excess glycophosphate, and that's really what's causing the allergies. But having an increased incidence of these issues around too much folic acid. Well, how can that result? How can you have too much folic acid? Well, you could say, well, I'm taking a supplement that's too high. What else could cause that? Not just a supplement, but having the inability to digest or metabolize what you're taking in, whether it's high or low. How do we digest and metabolize what's coming in, the folic acid that's coming in? Well, that's through its cofactors, namely riboflavin, B6, B12. These compounds are intrinsically involved in the activation of folic acid by dihydrofolate reductase into tetrahydrofolate and 5-methyltetrahydrofolate, 5-MTHF. People always talk about 5-MTHF. Okay, I'll start saying that so you get it. But these factors are required to put it in its active form. And where do these foods come from? Where do these nutrients come from? Riboflavin, B6, B12. Well, B12 we know are animal products. B6, variety of foods. Walnuts, particularly, are high in B6. Bananas are high in B6. If you're taking a supplement you need to think, well, of course you think, oh, well, I ate walnuts and bananas and I have B6 and I have riboflavin, I ate some dairy and I had my leafy greens which have riboflavin, I had walnuts, they have riboflavin. But what if the levels of folic acid you're taking are so high that your nutrient, your cofactor intake is right here, but your supplement intake or food intake from processed foods, I'm referring to processed foods because folic acid is only in processed foods, is up here in total. Oh my goodness, I am draining. It's raining tears, onions. So now I've got all my onions chopped. For every dry cup of lentils for this recipe, you want to use 2 large onions, white or yellow, it doesn't matter. Now I've got my olive oil heated up, so I'm going to take these and I'm going to start caramelizing all these onions. This is my triple recipe. Yes, the olive oil should be that hot where it should bubble up. But you want to be careful not to smoke your olive oil. That damages the delicate vitamin E. So if you're consuming this high level of folic acid and this high levels of the cofactors, and you started down here, here's your cofactors, here's your folate here. If you are only consuming the cofactors here, this upper amount of folic acid is not getting metabolized. And so we have to say, what happens to this folic acid? Is this a good or bad thing? Is it innocuous? Does it just not have an effect in the body, just excretes it because folic acid is a water-soluble vitamin or folate's a water-soluble vitamin? Or do this unmetabolized folic acid result in negative effects in the body? Because in that negative effects of the potentiality of folic acid to hurt the body is the reason why folate comes in food. Folic acid or folate, they're the same thing really, but they're not. Folate is in folate form in foods, and that's the food form. It's called folate. And that we need to consume that because it doesn't have detrimental effects, and that's why it's so imperative. And again, the message I want to reach people is that we can't make up for poor nutritional intake by a vitamin and supplement. Now, vitamin supplements do have their place, and they can help make up for negative physiological functions, certain metabolic issues, a nervous system that needs more of one nutrient, or a kidney that needs more of another nutrient because of how you were born and your unique genetic and physiological makeup that was determined by your mother's dietary intake as well as up to 2 generations past of dietary intake, which is why I think as a population and in terms of population health, I think my work is really important because its aim is to reach people and explain how consuming the proper foods is not affecting us and our individual lives, but our babies and our children's and our children's children's, and that goes to population health. And the 50% or 45% of the population is consuming really high levels of folic acid, like the data says. How is that having population health effects 3 generations down? Folate is responsible for a wide range of purposes in the body, from making things to metabolic actions, to helping cells replicate through its interactions with DNA and RNA and the genetic code, and how that genetic code is translated. Folate is central. I'm going to put these lentils in my big clay pot because I'm going to be cooking my Mujaddarrah in this pot. 1 carbon metabolism generates methyl groups. This is CH3. Methyl groups are used in a wide range in the body, both from synthesizing things and for signaling. A big way they translate information from outside the cell to inside the cell is through methylation, and particularly in regards to telling the body how the environment is. So 1 carbon metabolism is used in epigenetics, it's used for histones, it's used for RNA encoding, it is used to synthesize glycine, it is used to make neurotransmitters, It is used to, one carbon metabolism helps turn some things into other things. For example, parts of that is why one carbon metabolism is the reason why betaine can be turned into glycine. What does this involve? The need for methyl groups and the one carbon metabolism fueled by folate, the active form of tetrahydrofolate, the 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate that feeds in to the one carbon metabolism cycle, which requires other nutrients such as riboflavin, B6, B12. It's also used to transform fats into other fats or proteins into other proteins, or this is the one carbon metabolism that is fed by folate. It is used, for example, if you consume too many fats and your body needs carbohydrates. There's a myriad of methods in the body so that the body can get what it needs. In order to do that, you have to have your central metabolic cycles working. Folate is clutch for telling the body what's going on outside. How does it do this, you might ask? Well, one is by epigenetics. What is epigenetics? Epigenetics is a coding above the genome. So we have the genome and the DNA, and then that makes the proteins, the RNA proteins, the ribonucleotides, which is then translated into proteins. And these are modified, it's called epigenetic modification, above the level of the genome through methyl groups. I'm almost not stirring these enough. I don't want to have black. I need to start stirring more frequently once they get to about this stage so that I prevent more of these little black parts right here at the bottom. The view is okay, it kind of can't be helped to get a nice dark caramelization. These are almost done. I just have too few of the white onions. I still want to get those nice and cooked. Now, histones are a major way that epigenetic modification is elucidated or translated in the cell. The cell uses histones. They're like little balls and they're all stacked up. And the DNA wraps around them. Okay, well, if you have a little machinery traveling around trying to express the DNA, but it can't get to some of the DNA because it's hidden by histones, then the cell only gets this expressed part. What is this expressed part from? What does this part of the exposed part of the histones have the DNA? Of course, sometimes histones unfold and they change shapes and they can access other DNA, but I'm just talking about one case scenario. These histones here, or this DNA here, is telling the cell previous environmental signals, and it goes back and forth. There's crosstalk: environment, cell, cell, environment. So what happens is the one carbon metabolism helps put on methyl groups in response to what's happening outside the cell, so the inside of the cell knows about it, and there's crosstalk between the cells, and your body can adapt and acclimate to the outside, the environment. So if you don't have enough folate, the active form of folate, you're not going to be able to have all this. So the body might be saying to itself, well, we don't have optimal environment. We don't have an optimal situation where living conditions are optimal. Their living conditions are this, so the body needs to change and adapt to this type of living condition so that it can function and survive in this living condition. And that is really how epigenetic modification happens, and it is passed down. It's heritable, those modifications, to your progeny, because imagine if your grandmother grew up in one environment, it's more probable that you're going to grow up in a similar environment. And I just had a long-winded thought. I'm not going to go into that. It takes several generations to change this function, and that's why we see a lot of diseases are more likely. They're not inheritable. They're environmental diseases such as diabetes, obesity, heart disease, but they do have some aspect that's heritable. It's not heritable through the gene. It's inheritable from the environmental signals that your body translated into it, and your body's translating negative environmental signals if you're not getting the proper nutrition, in this case folate from foods. And we can go into later the different types of folate that can cause increased risk of autism, particularly, is one concern, where if you have too low folate intake, if you have a low folic acid intake and a low B12 intake, you have a greater risk of autism. And also conversely, if you have a high folic acid intake, and I'm talking about folic acid, not folate, and a high B12 intake, so imagine you're taking a super high supplement, maybe 1,000 micrograms or 900 micrograms a day, and you're also eating meat and getting a high B12 intake, and you're also taking a B12 supplement. Well, those combined with perhaps genetic risk factors can lead to a greater incidence of autism. Actually, the research shows that it leads to a greater incidence of autism, just separated from that and not even counting that issue itself. So we have to be really careful when it comes to supplementation, and I think that the movement towards supplementation unilaterally and in high dosage is going to be it has been shown to be counter-effective to the public health situation. And folate during pregnancy and lactation is super important. You must have enough folate for your body's cells to replicate, to make both your uterus, for example, making more glycine, folic acid. Folate is super important for glycine synthesis. You need this for collagen, to grow your skin, for the baby. The baby requires high levels of folate, especially in the very beginning of growth, and they say preconception folic acid is vital, and I agree, and I think that's made huge strides in the public health front in regards to decreasing the incidence of neural tube defects, a disease that's completely preventable, horrible, graphic, and way worse than something like childhood allergies or schizophrenia. And that's way worse than increased risk of autism or childhood allergies or food sensitivities or asthma, that all these are associated with too high folic acid intake. Now, conversely, there are other downsides to not consuming enough folate as well, besides neural tube defects, language delays, schizophrenia, depression, mood issues from too low folate. I need to stir my onions. Now, folate is also important for things like making neurotransmitters. You need enough folate for a wide variety of processes in the body. And it's also super important that you're consuming enough of the cofactors to metabolize folic acid if you're consuming that, but also folate in general. Folate is not a discrete nutrient, just like all the other nutrients, and this is why it's so important to eat, I think, a wide range of foods and be more of an omnivore, like a conscious omnivore, where you're avoiding chemicals, processed foods, things that you know you should not be eating. They're not real foods. That's what's causing disease. That's what's causing low functioning. That's what's causing your depression and your moods and your negative energy state, where you're existing on chakra level like 3 rather than 7 or 8 where you could be. Riboflavin, low riboflavin can also be caramelization and dry going up, and then the red stripe progressing pretty rapidly. I love to cook in the clay pots, and eventually, soon you should be able to get these clay pots for order on my website. If not already, if this video is old. One of my goals. Minetta! If you're taking too high of a folic acid supplement and you're not consuming enough B12, which is likely to happen in the case of being vegan or vegetarian, in utilizing supplements, thinking that you're doing the right thing, what can happen is you can develop anemia. The doctor can misdiagnose if you happen to have pernicious anemia, where you can't absorb B12 in your stomach, so you don't have enough intrinsic factor. This can be misdiagnosed by a doctor if you are consuming too high folic acid intake. Why is this? This is because folic acid or folate has the ability to help mask a B12 deficiency in regards to the production of red blood cells. So if you have high levels of folate or folic acid, you can still produce enough red blood cells, though they'll be large and immaturely formed, because the folate can kind of cover up and make up for the DNA, the lack of DNA synthesis. But folate, or a large amount of folate, cannot make up for a B12 deficiency in other areas, such as neurological issues or in regards to forming the myelin sheath. You need B12, and if you don't have enough B12, this is not going to happen. So what happens is if you have a B12 deficiency over a long period of time and you're misdiagnosed with a different type of anemia, you take folate or folic acid, it improves the symptoms because you're getting more red blood cells, because only the red blood cells are being measured by the doctor rather than B12 amounts. And they see that you have more red blood cells from consuming the folate or the folic acid supplement. They're going to think, oh, well, you were just deficient in folic acid, so that's curing it. But over the long term, you actually be deficient in B12, and you can develop neurological problems and other health issues. And so that's another reason why it's really important to eat in a whole foods manner, and for folic acid, not exceed the upper limit of 1,000 micrograms per day. And in general, because of the other issues that can occur during pregnancy, you should be taking a mid-range of folic acid supplementation around 400 micrograms per day. What happens in the body, metabolically speaking, when you're deficient in B12 but you've got enough folate or really high levels of folate, is that the folate gets trapped in the 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, and this is called the methyl trap. So you'll have all this folate stuck in this form and it can't be metabolized, and you don't have enough B12 to help metabolize. I think that this methyl trap of folate, or folate getting stuck, or folic acid getting stuck in a partially metabolized state, is a lot of the reason behind health problems. People are taking folic acid supplements, but they're not consuming enough B12. Especially in the vegan and vegetarian and the health conscious population, it's a nutrient that you're not consuming enough of, or you're not consuming it at all. And then you take a B12 supplement that's impure, that's not activated, it's not absorbed by the body for some reason like that, and you're not eating it's the small animal products. You can have several eggs a day and meet your B12 requirement easily. You do not need to eat large amounts of meat, and I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying the converse is true, really, that you need to eat lots of legumes, like here, leafy vegetables, get your riboflavin. Low riboflavin can also exacerbate a low folate, because think about it, you need riboflavin to activate the folate. Well, if the folate's already low and then riboflavin's low too, you won't even be able to activate what you have. So it's really important to be eating your leafy greens, your beans, your nutrients in conjunction with your folate. Rather than taking a high dose supplement and thinking, oh, I'm good. I'm gonna add I've got my caramelized onions here, and to speed up the process, I did it in 3 pots because I'm missing my large giant saucepan, a calamity of the geographical location I'm in and moving. Here we go. And so remember, folate is super important to consume. It's a very, very easy nutrient to get. There's no excuse for not getting the amounts you need. Lentils are a powerhouse of not only folate but other nutrients. And I soak lentils every week. I'm always using lentils. And they're also very mild and versatile, and you can put them with anything, and you don't really taste the lentils like you do other beans. For those mamas that think that eating meat is going to increase their collagen synthesis and get all that nice plump skin, think again. Folate. Why is that? Because folate is central in the metabolism of making glycine. This is especially true for your fetus. You don't need to eat bone broth and lots of meat with cutty, steaky, bony meat. Yes, can be nourishing to the body, and the body needs it, but the body's holistic, and we are omnivores, and we should be eating real foods in moderate amounts. And meat, you could eat meat 1 day a week, fish 1 day a week, eggs other days, once in a while dairy on some pizza or in your quiche, less than an ounce a week, plenty of nuts and seeds, and you're good, you're golden, you are going to be so healthy. And a dish like this is making that, giving you the body's absorbable form of folate and helping you make beautiful glycine for your collagen synthesis. And then I've got my, push this aside. Remember I said I'm going to save this rice water. I'm going to give it a nice stir. And then I'm going to add that rice in there. And then I'm going to bring the whole pot to a boil and turn it down and cook it for several hours. And you wouldn't believe what a mild dish this is. When you think onions, lentils, rice, you think my kid's going to eat that? No. Listen, just ask the mommy nutritionist. This, they're going to love it. They're going to love it. It's so mild. And add some salt if your child is used to eating any processed foods at all. So they're all very, very high in sodium. I'm going to add 3 teaspoons of salt to this recipe. Got my salt. Salt is a super important nutrient. I used to think that, oh, I don't need salt, or believe these nutrition gurus, don't eat salt your whole life, you never age. No, baby. Sodium, salt, you need salt. I mean, every food has some levels of sodium. The bad sodium is the unbalanced sodium from processed foods, sodium chloride. This here, baby, is salt from the sea. I probably need that salt. I didn't have any salt this morning. I had coffee, my homemade soy milk. Add some more for the kiddos. I had several glasses of water, but without salt and without much sugar to help absorb that. I didn't have a lot of food, so I might not have sodium. That is going to activate my brain. It's going to help retain the healthy water, keep me hydrated through the afternoon when I go out dancing. Got me your dancing queen. And that's it. That is our beautiful Mujaddarrah. We're going to cook this for 3 hours, and then I'll be back to show you the final result. And I hope you learned something. And you can call me the priestess of nutrition, Carmen Cook.